Chad, you mind do the roll call?
Let's get a little order in here.
Here. Mr. Wick.
Here.
Mr. Bishop. Here. Mr. Master.
Always here.
Mr. Quinn.
Here.
All present.
Before the meeting starts, I'd like to do a little history here. Somebody brought this to me. About 50 years ago, I've got an article you all have. It says, Marion County had its first female judge Saturday when Joseph R. Carrico, his wife, Mickey Carrico, was sworn in by County Judge Joe B. Jarboe to serve that day while Jarboe was out of town. The two are shown above. The swearing-in ceremony early Saturday morning in Judge Jarboe's office. So somebody asked me just to kind of.
Pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I didn't either. They'll have one come out on Mr. Quayle for long. They'll probably have one 50 years on Mr. Quayle.
I'd say Masher Wicker and Masher about the only two old enough in this room to remember that. Maybe Mr. Brock.
I remember smoking Joe Jarboe. You're probably right. That's when a judge was Mr. Quayle.
Oh, Mr. Quayle. Yeah. He was an infant though.
I still ride the bicycle when he owned the car.
That's right.
All right, the first item on the agenda is to consider the approval of minutes of previous meeting held Thursday, October 1st.
Second.
Mr. Wick.
Yes.
Mr. Bishop. Yes. Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Mr. Elder. Yes. Mr. Master.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Second item on the agenda is, we got Mr. Mike Shannon here with us today. He's a state electrical, with the state electrical inspections, to address the issues of temporary electric services throughout the county. Mike, if you don't mind, kind of.
First, I'd like to know just maybe what the questions would be that you would have, because, I mean, I could probably talk on that for an hour, but, what questions do you have specifically that I could ask?
I got one for you. How long does a temporary hookup stay temporary? Or can it stay temporary?
With temporary, home service?
Residents, yeah,
There is no limit.
no
Yeah.
limit.
I think what the problem here, Mr. Shannon, is that we've had some individuals across the county have contacted us. Some have come to the court meeting. And one of the concerns is that individuals maybe pulling up a little shelter or something and getting temporary service, and then like shanties, for example.
I'm aware of one of the problems that you're dealing with, and actually I was your inspector at the time
Right.
to start, and you're very limited at what you can do. We have got many specific laws that we would like to play with sometimes. Sometimes we can bluff our way through, but when push comes to shove, we got to make it law. And as far as when you, in this particular case now that I think that maybe we're dealing with, what amplifies the situation even more is it's on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
Because by definition, a farm being 10 or more acres. So now we're dealing with, and to give you the power of the way this whole thing actually works, the whole process starts through the KRS. And the laws that govern the electrical inspections as well as electrical licensing laws and such are chapter KRS 227 and 227A. Then you go down into what is called KAR regulations, which are the how the individual departments or areas or entities within the government are to address and make happen the laws in KRS. And the electrical side of things is in 815, KAR 815. Well, it's through the KRS and through the KARs that we adopt the Kentucky Building Code. And the Kentucky, well, which would be actually the Kentucky Building Code and the Kentucky Residential Code, which are two separate documents. And it is through both of those documents that we adopt the NEC. So all of that plays its role in looking up, and it makes you go back and forth, and it's very, very difficult to negotiate and understand.
So are you saying, like, as Master Masterson pointed out on his question, for example, I call the utility company and I ask for a temporary service. They grant me, they go ahead and put it in and it's granted under a temporary service. Are you saying that there are no state regulations that puts a time limit on what a temporary service is or can cancel that temporary service?
There's no time limits that would put a time limit on how long it can be. Now,
What about the electrical company? Do they have,
some do, some don't.
that's what I was, yeah.
But that
That
has to
depends
do
on
with
the-
their specific charters and how they are set up through the Public Service Commission.
Well, what would be the benefit for any electric company to leave something temporary?
There is none. And it's a problem. This is not just a problem that you're having. This is a problem that I've been trying to address for years. And it's just, it's very difficult. Now, one of the things that comes into play is also what people call is language. And sometimes what we call things in the field and what they actually are is not necessarily the same thing. And giving an example, I've had multiple farmers in particular set a temporary pole for a electrical fence that they would want. Well, that's not a temporary pole. That's a service. That falls under different guidelines. In this particular case, this was set up originally as a temporary pole. But should that same individual decide to set him up a service, right there beside where that's at, for a electric fence that he wanted to put in, there's not a thing anybody can do about it. Provided that he follows all the rules and regulations that are throughout the whole process, which would include the rules in KRS 227, 227A, KAR regulations, and so forth. So he could convert that over. They could cut him off as far as a temporary pole is concerned, and he could take the same pole, leave it in place, and have it for another use, and there's not a thing anybody can do about it. It brings in an argument, and I have to say that I'm on both sides of the fence, but it brings in an argument for zoning, it brings in an argument for inspections and so forth within the county. To prevent this type of thing from happening.
Why don't
As
he,
it stands now, there's nothing that we can do about it departmental-wise.
why don't he have to have his house inspected or whatever it thing is?
Well, under the KRS regulations, 227, if you're on a farm specifically, you don't have to have an inspection done.
If it's more than so many acres, isn't that correct?
10 acres.
But if it's less than 10 acres, are you saying that, all right, if it's more than 10 acres, obviously it classifies as a farm, but let's say it's less than 10 acres. Let's say somebody bought a acre plot, okay? And they put a shanty in and they called and they got excuse me.
I'm sorry, I come a little closer.
Yeah, it's
I
fine.
don't hear so well.
Believe it or not, I don't speak that loud too often. But anyway, someone buys an acre lot, okay, and they put a shanty in, for example. Then obviously they would just contact the electrical co-op or the electrical company, ask for temporary service. That's because they're getting around. So they get it, it's inspected, correct?
Yes.
And as long as it's approved from the inspection standpoint, as far as the electrical company's concerned, and are you telling me also the state, well, I know you can't speak for the electrical company, I'm just asking for your experience here, but once that's done, as far as the state regulations, KRSs and so forth, or as far as the electrical co-ops, they don't care what kind of property that is. That does not,
That's not exactly true. The farm makes it more complicated.
okay, so let's rule out the farm, because we know the 10
Take away
acres.
the farm. There's nothing to prevent a homeowner from doing his own thing. So through the KRSs, from the electrical standpoint, provided that the NEC rules and regulations are met, it's good to go. Now, given an example here in Marion County, because this is where we live, if I've got a 5-acre tract out here and I decide to build a house on it, I am still required, even though there is no requirements in the state that we have a building inspection on that house, I am required by the state to follow the state residential code. So at that level, it's a possibility of getting the state involved in from the Department of Housing, Building and Construction, not necessarily from the electrical side of things, but from the building codes to address that issue. But then we get into so many other issues because we've got the definitions of a dwelling.
Yeah,
Now, a definition of a dwelling requires him to have sanitary conditions. It requires him to have permanent cooking conditions and permanent sleeping facilities. Well, I built that shanty, it didn't meet the definition of a dwelling. Without zoning codes and regulations here, there's still maybe not a whole lot they can do.
Is there anything that ties your electrical end in with the plumbing inspectors on a dwelling? Because we've already addressed
They're not
temporary
just a dwelling.
water
It's not just a dwelling.
and then not having a septic.
That's correct, but you get a release from the health department before you can hook up that temporary pole for a dwelling. And they will give you a release, and this gentleman got his originally, that it is a release for temporary power for construction. But then he can turn right around, like I said, and put that same pole up for an electric fence box. He's not required to have that release, because that's not for construction.
So unless we do something countywide as far as inspections,
I'm
There's-
looking into it from a departmental standpoint, but it doesn't look real good. With it being on a farm, it just doesn't look like there's going to be a lot that can be done.
So he owns 10 plus acres.
He owns, from what I'm gathering, 20 acres, maybe a little more.
Plus, if he's under construction, if it's temporary, some people do it in 6 months, some take 5 years, or if they're, say they're working on it, then they could say it's still temporary because we're not finished, or
Yeah.
it's hard.
And is it a dwelling?
Yeah.
You know, we know a person's living there, but by definition, we have to deal with that in so many aspects, it's unreal. We have to go by, when we are dealing with electrical issues or building code issues, we have to deal with those specific definitions. And within the code aspects, they give you many times what the definition of something is, which is not always what we call it. So particularly when it gives us a definition, no matter what we know it is being used for, it has to fall within the criteria of that definition to be that.
Be a tobacco barn, and he's staying in it.
That wouldn't make that, he's staying in it, he's living in it, but it doesn't meet the definition of a dwelling, therefore it wouldn't apply.
you know, as a matter of fact, I was out in a certain part of the county yesterday, and the gentleman I was with showed me a barn that this couple moved into about 2 years ago, and they got electrical service, and, I mean,
It
it's,
happens all the time.
yeah.
Another issue that we run into that, and actually I've got an investigation going now in another county. We have a situation where a person comes in, and this is quite prevalent throughout the state. They will come in, they will set a temporary pole up, or a pole for that electric fence I'm talking about. Well, next thing you know, they come up and you drive by a month later and there says a mobile home.
Yeah, there you go.
Happens all the time.
My understanding was you couldn't live under a temporary service. A temporary is what it's supposed to be, temporary.
You cannot occupy the building under temporary occupancy. Correct. He didn't have temporary occupancy. He just got temporary service.
It's not classified as a dwelling.
Straighten that out again there, and I'm from down around Merck Springs there. You gotta say it a little, St. Mary's, you gotta say it a little slower.
Now, I don't know what he has there now, but technically when it was built, we've got a temporary pole with plugs on it and a breaker box, remote from the shanty house. There's no connection from point A, permanent connection from point A to point B.
That's pretty slick. I'm just gonna tell you.
People
I mean,
figure out
yeah.
ways of getting around the system, believe me.
Well, you know, I think there's one individual I know of that purchased additional land, and I think he realized about the 10 acres, and he didn't have 10 acres, or he had close to it, but then he purchased additional, and
It happens all the time.
I think, yeah, it's amazing, because, you know, yeah, you're dealing with
It's
these,
amazing how much people know that you don't think they know.
yeah, exactly.
It's a matter of learning the rules and the regulations
They call it beating the system.
and it's there. Because again, I deal with it on a daily basis. I just came from a problem that hazard last night got in. And, people are slick. They learn how to be.
So let me ask you this, and Lisa, you could help me out with this, but if I understand correctly, so let's say that the county decides to incorporate a local ordinance, okay, that deals with certain subjects or issues such as this. But if state law states otherwise, state law is, I guess, does state law have the upper hand as opposed to the local ordinance?
Well, it could, then it would be a question of whether or not it would be retroactive back, it would be forward, so.
Yeah, and that's the one point that we discussed at the last meeting, is that those, unfortunately, right now, those individuals that have pretty much done what they've done, whether it's a shanty or whatever, they're somewhat grandfathered, okay? It'd be very difficult, I think, in a court of law to
Difficult to
go.
go retroactive back on.
Right, that's correct. I think you were spitting in the wind there. But moving forward, I guess my question is that how would the county ordinance play in comparison, that if our ordinance was a little tighter, said this, but yet the state regulations or KRS were here?
I think the county could be more definitive in their requirements.
I can answer that from an electrical standpoint.
All right.
Because that's where my expertise lies. A county can, by ordinance, do things that go above and beyond the requirements of the
There you go.
NEC.
We can't get any less.
You cannot require any less
Right.
than the requirements of the NEC.
And we would have-
Sometimes that can become a gray area.
Yeah.
But from an electrical standpoint, the county, for example, the NEC, well, that's not even exactly, but let's just say only require one running rod in every situation.
Yeah.
The county can by ordinance require a person to drive 3 ground rods.
Right. Well,
Which exceeds NEC requirement.
But we
Yeah.
would have to enforce, if it was our ordinance, we would have to enforce it, the state wouldn't.
The state would.
no, state
Correct.
would not recognize it per se because it's a
And
county
they wouldn't worry
ordinance.
about enforcing. it.
Yeah, just like the speed limit. I mean, we can't make our speed limits on county roads 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, we can make them 30 if we are so forth, but we can't
But
go above.
it's
So.
the same given situation. And I can't answer for building codes. I'm doing well to answer for my own department.
Yeah.
But I would say it would work very similar in those other areas as well.
So moving forward here, I guess the question I've got for you is that from your experience and knowledge of being out in the field as well as from the state KRS and so forth regulations, what would you suggest to the court in trying to help on this situation that we have or this issue that we have?
Well, the first step is, let me see what I can find out with the farm thing, because they're supposed to be getting me some pictures, where I can take it to our attorneys and to our people to let them see first if there is anything that can be done. And we will deal, and Lisa, you can close your ears on this one. Every time we turn around, we have a different set of attorneys, and every one of them look at it differently.
Yeah.
One of them will come in and tell us we can do this, and the other one will come in and say, no, you can't do that, and the other one will come in and say, now, why aren't you doing this?
See, that's why.
Like sometimes we never know where we're going to come to.
Well, that's why we love our county attorney, Miss Snally Martin, because she is consistent, she's strong, and she takes care of the citizens.
But
Thank you.
once I get the photographs, I will be giving it to our people to let them look at it from the building code standpoint.
Can you provide that information to Judge Daugherty so he can share that with us?
Once I get it, I can.
Okay.
And I'm not making you any guarantees.
No, I understand.
It may not be a thing they can do.
Right.
Other than that, the only thing that you could do is,
Ordinance.
work with an ordinance somewhere.
We hope, from our perspective, that the state will step up and stop these kind of things from happening.
The provisions are there, but they put that monkey on your back.
Yeah, you know how stuff, what's that old saying, something trickles downhill or something? I think it, yeah, something,
It
yeah.
kind of goes back to the building inspection in the counties, and you can look at this however you want to. Again, I've seen both sides of this issue, been on both sides of it. Counties that deal with building inspections per se, this problem doesn't exist. And in most counties, and I can't answer for all, but I do know that most counties that have inactive building inspection programs, after they're done, the local people that actually end up liking it better because it keeps every Tom, Dick, and Harry from coming in and just blowing up, doing things that they can get by with because there is no program. So it's, you know, those are one of those things where, you know, we're dealing with those constant issues now, not with just that, but with other things, but how big can government get?
Well, judging by what you're saying, it would take some pretty in-depth thinking to write an ordinance that would,
Yeah.
Every scenario,
yeah.
yeah.
The electrical thing is
then
a lot
once you-
better than it used to be as far as most electricians now know there is a code and all the legitimate ones, they go by. You know, from what I can see, most
of the
of,
legitimates make an honest attempt to do that.
yeah, and then you still got a few that,
And you always will.
yeah, but it's a lot overall, it's just from what I see, it looks like the ones that do it legitimately are going by
Yeah.
the code and try to make it right.
So the long-term effect is, or the simple solution is that the county could address these issues and other issues by ordinance. But then what the county has to, or what the court has to look at is that if we do, then we also have to be willing to go into our budget, because you have to have enforcement of that ordinance. So who's going to enforce it, so on and so forth. So that's something that we need to consider as well. Because an ordinance without true enforcement, you're just wasting your time.
We
So.
have enough of that in KRS.
Amen to that. Yeah, we have enough of those. You know, the other side of it too is though, is that, you know, and it's a fine line because, you know, you gotta be, I also think it's very difficult because, just because, you know, someone can't afford a house with brick or stone or whatever, doesn't mean that, you know, so you gotta be very careful.
Poor people need a place to live as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's a fine line. I wish I had a good answer for you, but I don't.
Well, thank you so much. I kinda hoped you'd have one today, Mr. Shannon. I mean, you know, I appreciate you that. It's not there's no easy answer, obviously.
We appreciate your information, though, that helps.
Anything else?
Do you know-
I can answer while I'm here.
You know any other counties that do have any electrical ordinances in place?
Or building.
Building code,
Bowling
building?
Green, if I'm not mistaken, has some specific electrical ordinances that are separate from the NEC that go above and beyond. And
You mean the city of Bowling Green as opposed to the county of Warren?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
It could be either one. It could possibly be Warren County. And I do know there are some, that's the only one that I know of, and I don't even know what that is. I've just been told that they do that.
Gotcha.
Bowl County has some kind of building code, don't they?
They have a building code, but he's talking about specific ordinances that go above and beyond.
Yeah.
Just for electrical.
Bowl County has, they go by the statewide building code and residential code.
I think I know the answer to this, but if somebody's buying different parcels of ground, and say they buy a 2-acre tract and a 6-acre tract, and is that still considered one farm if they're putting something
As
All
long,
that for the attorneys.
I think that boils down to as long as it's contiguous. I'm
You
pretty-
got to put it in,
I would say that
if there's different
you got
deeds
to
for
join it
different?
up.
At least
Be
if
a
you
law
might
school.
look into this, I've had this definition given to me so many different ways of how to deal with this farm issue, because it bounces you all over the place. Because if you look into the plumbing codes, you'll find a little bit different definitions than you will in some of the other KRSs with it. So I don't think you've got something necessarily that is consistent across the board. I do know that it has been looked at in the past that when they talk about farm, they talk about working farm. Now, owning land does not constitute a working farm. Back to the opposite example of that, my daughter has 50 acres of forest land. She's in the forestry program. She's got a tree farm. I'm sorry, that's a working farm. So there's ways around some of that if you know how to finagle through the system. But I've heard that used before, but I've been told both ways of that.
Yeah, I'm pretty,
Well, a lot of government programs, it has to be a certain amount of your income actually come off the farm. Of course, if you have no income and you have chicken out there, 100% of your income coming off the farm.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to pin it down, and you're exactly correct. I've got an example of that same thing where a woman raised dollars. And she had income coming from the dollars, and she had over 10 acres.
It gets back to kind of like the junk ordinance and everything else. If this is a treasure or something making a living out of it, it's not junk. You know, we get the
Very,
same.
very difficult to deal with.
appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.
Mike, I appreciate you coming.
Mike, have a good day. Have a good weekend.
Confuse us a little more.
I wish I could give you more of what you wanted, but
Well, that don't surprise us a lot. We need to get into all these KRSs and all this stuff. A lot of it's kind of confusing.
You know, I just,
welcome to my world.
I want to,
You ever read the
Thank you, Mike, I appreciate it.
hearsay rule in the book? In the
Hearsay,
book?
the hearsay rule.
Yeah.
let me
It's
clear,
about
let me,
yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
I read it one night in the attorney, when we got through, I don't think neither one of us understood it.
let me ask you a question. So when you spoke to Intercounty, you didn't speak
I did
to,
not speak to
okay.
Katie.
Intercounty, again, they do not have a policy in regards to temporary service, the time and so forth. Is that correct, or?
They said they used to not have a policy, but now they look at a year.
That's
Well,
what
this is intercounty.
Coyne told me the same thing.
Oh, was that right?
He said they
After
got
all,
a,
April of 2014, I think they started.
Just started.
instituting it.
That's up to them.
Right.
So obviously anyone prior to that is
It's,
grandfathered
told me
in.
that you cannot live off of temporary service.
Well, it's RECC, isn't it? Taking language.
Well, that's not per se.
That's been cut off, my understanding, so, I mean, but
Well, I guess that's the point. That's one thing right there that, if Intercounty, for example, has institute this new policy about temporary service, that's a good step forward, okay?
Sure.
Of course, KU, we'd have to find out, I'm sure they probably fall in the same line. But with that being said, I mean, even though I've got
If-
temporary service, when they sell me,
Under
well, I can't have any
construction.
more, I'm,
if they're trying to build, a lot of things takes a long time. If they're under construction, making progress, then it's,
you're right.
but if they're not doing anything,
well, they'd be like everybody else. It takes manpower to go check on these things, as long as they're paying their bill.
Yeah.
they
For
cut
the
them
most
off.
part,
they-
they
I think that's the bottom line. As
I
long as
think
they're getting a check, it's all
I
good.
can understand the concept, with computers, if there's 10,000 people and you got 150, and you got them flagged as temporary,
You gotta send somebody out there to verify it, so, I mean, there's where you.
check 10 of them.
It takes.
Find 2 of them, 2 of them gone.
Then they get them a generator and live happily ever after.
County attorney gonna look at them.
Or the magistrate,
The magistrate, I'd like that.
in their district.
Absolutely. We hear a motion on that one?
We need some emotion on that.
Yeah. I think we'll move forward right now.
Let's leave that alone.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Well, it gives us something to think about anyway.